Hello and welcome to episode number 225. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com, and I'm Cornelius Fichtner. Nice to have you with us. This is part 2 of our interview with Kevin Riley and how he prepared for and then successfully passed the PMI Agile Certified Practitioner exam. That's the PMI-ACP exam. Hearing him speak is a great reminder for us all that having a plan and sticking to it as we prepare for exams is paramount for our exam preparation. But almost more important is hearing somebody else talk about how they managed to pass their exam. It serves as a boost for us all who are also on the path of becoming PMI-ACP certified. They're showing us the way and they're showing that we can actually do it ourselves. So if you are yourself interested in becoming PMI-ACP certified, well then sign up to the Agile Prepcast newsletter at pmprepcast.com/agile and be among the first to prepare for your exam using our newest sister podcast, the Agile Prepcast. We are still and furiously working to get it finished and out for you in 2012. And now, enjoy part 2 of the interview with Kevin.
The Project Management Podcast's feature interview.
Today with Kevin Riley, PMP, Senior Project Management Training Consultant for KRPM Training Solutions.
You know what? We've talked for half an hour about everything around the exam, and we haven't actually talked about how you prepared, other than, you've taken this online course here. So tell me a little bit more about that course. What was it like? Did you feel that it was worth the money that you paid for it? Did it help you in preparing?
Yeah, I actually I used 3 different things to study for the PMI-ACP, and I had 3 different books. And I don't, I'm probably not going to mention specific companies here, but the one book that I had went along with the 2-day webinar or webcast. So it was a synchronous webinar where we had an instructor. It was on a Thursday and a Friday. We logged in, and the instructor walked us through using WebEx all of the PowerPoint slides for that particular PMI-ACP. There was a workbook that went with that, and also a textbook or a study guide that followed that. And basically what they did is they went through how to pass the exam, then they went through all the different types of methods, also the Agile Manifesto, and some of the basic principles behind Agile. And this particular company was very geared toward passing the exam. So their only goal was to pass the exam. There wasn't any other superfluous information, if you will, about Agile project management.
Right. They're not trying to teach you how to manage an Agile project. They're trying to teach you how do you pass the PMI-ACP exam.
Exactly.
Right. Just as we do on the Agile Prepcast. Okay.
Right. So the information was very succinct, very to the point. And for this particular one, it was 2 days, 8 hours a day, 16 hours. In addition to that, we had homework for another 3 hours, and we had to take a final exam to come up to the 21 contact hours, which was also 3 hours. So
right, that is required because this is a distance learning company.
Right.
And because you are doing distance learning, they have to give you a final exam. That is mandatory. And this is also something that I tell my students. Look, if you take an exam preparation course, synchronous or asynchronous over the web, and they just give you the certificate without testing you, the certificate isn't worth the paper you're printing it on.
Absolutely.
Because it's not valid. They have to test you before they give you that particular certificate. All right.
Right. And this particular course was very good. It was interactive. We were able to ask questions, and we had a total of 12 people on it. So the size of it was perfect. In addition, this company is one of has some of the best simulators out there. So they had a lot of. They actually only had one simulated exam online, which was the final. But in their book, at the end of each chapter, they had questions. So it was very good. Again, we can't stress enough as PMP and PMI-ACP instructors, yourself and I, Cornelius, to take those exams. That's going to make the difference no matter what PMI that you test that you take.
Definitely. Since you only had one online simulated exam, did you reach out and look and purchase somebody else's simulator and go with that?
I did. And that actually leads into the second resource that I was using. There's another book that was created. It was actually created as a desk reference for Agile, so it had additional information in there, but it also had PMI-ACP exam prep. So the book was set up kind of the same as the first company that I worked with that did the asynchronous webinar, or the synchronous webinar rather. But this particular book was about 400 pages long, so it had a lot of information, had 25 questions at the end of each chapter, which was very helpful, and then had two 120-question final exams in the back. In addition to that, they have an online simulator that is basically 3 tests. They have a 40-question, an 80-question, and then a full 120-question test. But the nice thing about it is the database, the data bank number of questions was 1,000 questions. So even though you took the same exams, you had different questions. And if you had the same question, it kind of mixed it up, where the answers were in a different order, so you weren't able to memorize. You really need to know the concepts. So yes, in answer to your initial question, I did purchase another simulator, and I think it's important for people to do that, because taking just one final exam in 120 questions is not going to be enough. Having said that, I don't think you need to take 5, 6, 7, 8 exams, 200-question exams like you did for PMP exam prep. The same rules apply that you and I always tell our potential students about, is if you're taking a couple of exams in a row and you're getting over 80, 85%, you're ready to take the PMI-ACP. But the number of exams to do that, you're going to get to that point as long as you've done the basic studying within 2 to 3 exams.
Any other study materials you used?
I did have one other one, just to kind of mix it up. Another book, they offer just a textbook, and I use that as just a validation. And one of the things the reason that I wanted to get 3 different reference materials is to validate that the information I was studying was consistent. So the reason I say this is that the PMI-ACP is different than the PMP exam prep. The reason being is that the content and material is gleaned from 11 Agile books, and this is the material that PMI decided to come up with. So unlike the PMBOK guide, there is not a specific body of knowledge yet for PMI-ACP exam. So what these 3 books did, they took all the information from these 11 books, which, by the way, is 3,887 pages of material, and they put them together so we didn't have to do that ourselves. But again, the important thing for me was having 2 to 3 different references and cross-referencing and validating that the information was consistent. Having said that, it was about 95% consistent, which was good enough for me. There were certain differences between them, but at 95% I was comfortable using all those materials to study for the PMI-ACP exam.
So, since you counted all the pages in those books, did you also keep track of every hour that you studied? And can you tell us how many hours you actually studied?
I didn't. I wasn't as meticulous keeping hours as I was for PMP exam prep, but it was approximately 62 hours.
Just 62 hours?
Yes. Now,
does that include the 16 hours, the 21 hours of the course, or is that the self-study hours?
No, that's above and beyond the 21 hours. But what you have to understand, Cornelius, is that in anticipation of creating the Agile Prepcast with you,
right,
I actually read the 11 books.
Ah, lovely.
So I would, as someone that has not done that, I would say a goal would probably be between 120 to 150 hours, including the 21 hours of contact hours. Again, it's just from my own personal perspective. I'm kind of the exception to the rule because I do have a lot of agile knowledge in my brain already. And the interesting thing about that is if you're an agile practitioner already in terms of Scrum, or if you've worked as a coach, it's not like the PMP exam prep where being a project manager and then taking the PMP exam, we have what we refer to as the green sky versus the blue sky, where the blue sky, if you look out the window and the sky is blue, that's fine. But for the PMP exam, if the PMI says or the PMBOK guide says the sky is green, then for the purpose of the exam, the sky is green. With the PMI-ACP, you don't have to worry about that because if you're practicing Agile, all those principles are pretty universal and based on the Agile Manifesto. So you don't have to have that completely different mindset, except for the fact that the way that you actually take the exam in terms of PMI. So the knowledge, you don't have to worry about green sky, blue sky, but obviously go through the specifics that we offer as far as preparing for the exam and actually sitting for it. Does that make sense?
It does very much. That makes absolute sense. And that's also my personal approach to taking the exam myself.
Okay, good.
When I took the PMP exam, I created a brain dump sheet. A 1-pager, maybe a 2-pager that contains all the important formulas and things you need to know. Do you see value in a brain dump sheet for the PMI-ACP exam?
That's a great question. And so if we remember back to PMP exam prep, the main brain dumps that we were looking at were basically two different entities, if you will, as part of that brain dump. The first was obviously page 43 of the PMBOK guide, 4th edition, which is your processes, your process groups, and your knowledge areas. So that was a must. And the second was the formulas, a 1-page formula of the major formulas that you're going to find. With the PMI-ACP, the brain dump tool is definitely a lot better, but you don't need all of that specific information. My suggestion and what I used as far as brain dump are a couple of things. First of all, the basis of all Agile and all Agile frameworks and methodologies and the information on the PMI-ACP exam is the Agile Manifesto. So if you study nothing else and know nothing else, make sure that you know the Agile Manifesto in and out. There are 4 values. There are 12 principles. Come up with an acronym, do a word search, do a crossword puzzle, whatever it takes for you to determine what that brain dump is. So a lot of times what we do is have a mnemonic. There are 12 principles, so use the first letter of each of that mnemonic and come up with something that you can remember. So like we did with the knowledge areas, or like we did with the process groups and PMP exam prep. Come up with a mnemonic that works for you, because that piece of information as far as the Agile Manifesto values and principles, you have to know that. In addition to that, there's a mnemonic called INVEST, which is INVEST, that has to do with creating user stories, which are basically the scope and requirements gathering tool used in Agile. So inspect, INSPECT, make sure that you know all the specific parts of that. I'm not going to get into the Agile, the specific educational aspect of it now, but just the brain dump. As far as the formulas go, you don't really need to know any specific formulas in your brain dump for the PMI-ACP. We talk about earned value in terms of Agile, but if you have previous mnemonics from earned value that you use to help memorize those from PMP exam prep, use the same ones because the formulas are going to be the same. So basically, I guess what I'm saying is you don't need a brain dump formula-wise, but you definitely need a brain dump for at least the Agile Manifesto values, the Agile Manifesto 12 principles, and the INVEST user story validation for that. And those are the major tools that I use, Cornelius.
Wonderful. All right. Let's move on and actually take the exam. You already mentioned that it is taken at a Prometric test center. It's a computer-based exam. They walk you in there. They sit you down. You're in front of a computer. It's a regular computer that I assume a desktop with a mouse and all that, Windows-based. But first of all, you have to get to the testing center.
Yes.
You didn't know this particular testing center. Did you drive there first, like a week before to check it out?
Well, it was actually in the town that I used to live in, which I moved from about 9 months ago. But yes, I highly recommend you do a drive-by. Not a drive-by in as you're going to, open up fire on anyone, but go past the place, go into the center, ask the questions, learn when they open, etc. I can't stress that enough. So yes, I did that. The week before, I went on a Monday because I was going on a Monday the week after that. And I went into the Prometric Test Center. I determined when they opened. I talked to the proctor there and got all the information. This particular test center was a little more lax in terms of security-wise than when I took the PMP exam, because of the fact that when I took the PMP exam, they had a locker. You had to put your stuff in a locker. You had to turn out your pockets. You had to take your jacket off and show them that you had nothing in there. Whereas with this particular one, it was at a local community college, and basically I just put my stuff on top of a file cabinet, and they didn't even check my pockets. They just asked me if I had anything in there. So what it goes to show you is expect the worst, and I don't mean the worst in a bad way. I mean expect the highest level of security. Expect to have them ask you to turn out your pockets, to have a locker, and do all the things that you would normally do in an exam. And if they don't, then that's okay. You're prepared. Other things that we know about from our experience, Cornelius, take a sweater or a jacket just in case, it's cold in there, because a lot of times they do have these test centers pretty cold. Also, take something in terms of food and water that you can put in when you take a break. Now, the interesting thing about the PMI-ACP is it's a much shorter exam. It's only 3 hours. It's only 120 questions. What I did is I went through the same process that I did for the PMP exam when I took that. And basically, my process was 4 steps. And again, this is a suggestion. I'm not telling you have to do that. You have to determine for yourself as a PMI-ACP aspirant and test taker what works for you. So what I did is I sat down and I went through all 120 questions. I answered the ones that I could right away. And then the ones that I couldn't, I actually marked for review. Then I got up, took a 10-minute break, went to the restroom, had a banana, had some water, and then went back. My second pass was going through all those questions that I marked for review and tried to answer them. I really spent like a minute or two to try to come up with an answer for them. And I unmarked the ones that I was 90% sure that I got correct. My third pass, I didn't even get up because that only took me about 25 minutes, my second pass. My first pass was about an hour. Then I went back and actually went through those last questions, spent a little more time going through those and came up with the answers. And the PMI-ACP, there were only 4 or 5 questions where I actually did not have, I wouldn't say any idea, but I narrowed it down to the 2 best answers, but then I had to flip a coin to determine which one it is. So I actually did that. I said, okay, it's either this or this. I'm going to choose this and move on. And then I did a final pass, went through all the questions, made sure that they were answered and that none were marked for review. And then I pressed the button to end the exam.
Did you take up all the 3 hours? Didn't sound like it.
I didn't. It was actually 1 hour and 48 minutes.
Okay.
It took me.
Okay.
So
not bad. You said that they were a bit more lax with their security. Did they at least check your ID as you came?
Yes. Absolutely. They checked the ID. They checked you have to bring in your Prometric form with you to verify. Right. They verify your ID, and they actually have you sign in with the time and your name and signature and the specific exam that you're sitting for. Absolutely.
All right. Was there anything during the exam that surprised you or that was unexpected?
Well, to be honest with you, and take this with a grain of salt, all you listeners, it was a lot easier than I thought it was. Now, having said that, I want to qualify that statement. Obviously, I've had experience in Agile, been working in Agile, so for me it was a little easier. The good thing about it was that the questions that I had on all of the simulators that I used were much more difficult than the actual questions on the PMI-ACP exam.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. And then kind of overall, obviously we can't talk about specific questions because we don't want to violate the professional
exactly
code of conduct and professional ethics. But what I saw was there were the majority of the questions were on general agile principles. So again, I can't stress enough understanding and knowing the the Agile Manifesto principles and values. There were probably the majority of the specific methodology or method questions in terms of Agile were on Scrum, and there were also some XP, extreme programming, and also lean programming, lean software development questions. There weren't many other questions on other types of methodologies or methods in terms of Agile. But again, the majority of the questions were over on Agile Manifesto principles. One thing that came up quite often was the stakeholder management and the collaboration of the project team members. So it's very important to understand things like co-location, collaboration, self-organizing teams. The team is really the central unit of Agile, so it's important to understand all the aspects of the team. And just like in the PMP exam prep, what is the best answer in terms of Agile? So as an Agile practitioner, regardless of what the situation is, what is the best thing to do in terms of being an Agile practitioner? And that's kind of an overview of how the exam was. But to be honest with you, it was definitely much easier than the PMP exam. But because I was so well prepared, it was pretty easy for me, and I actually scored a proficient in both areas, which is the tools and techniques and the different knowledge area domains that's outlined in the PMI-ACP handbook outline. Mm-hmm.
How nervous when you pressed the final button saying, "I'm done"?
Interesting question, because I was more nervous before I started the exam than when I pressed the button. Now, let me preface that with something. The next part of my career, which I have actually embarked on since a week ago Monday, is to be a PMI-ACP instructor. So I actually went out last week and taught my first PMI-ACP class. So because this is the next phase in my career development, I was extremely nervous when I took the PMI-ACP exam and first sat down. When I took the PMP exam, I had my future riding on it, but I did not have a specific goal in mind in terms of what I was going to do next. So I would have looked pretty foolish if I had a PMI-ACP exam course scheduled this week as an instructor, and I failed the exam. So
that's pressure for you there.
But what I did was, after 2 or 3 minutes, I got in the mindset just like I was when I took the PMP exam. I'm prepared. I've done this 2 or 3 times. I've gone through this process, sitting down, taking the full 120 question, removing all, obstacles, all interruptions, going through my routine, and basically after 2 minutes, once I got in that my mindset, I was fine. Having said that, your original question, of course, at the end of it, you press, end exam. It asks you to fill out a survey about the Prometric Center, which I did. And then it's the second longest 30 seconds of your life as it churns and churns and churns. And then on the screen, you get your results, and it tells you your proficiency again in terms of tools and techniques, which is 50% of the exam, and then the different knowledge area domains, which is the second 50%. But yeah,
I believe those two are also printed on the score report.
Yes, they
that
are.
You receive as you leave.
Yes,
right?
they are. And again, it's the same as the other PMI exams. You either get proficient, moderately proficient, or below proficient. The good thing for me was I was proficient in both. And interestingly enough, I was the only one in the actual Prometric Center taking an exam. So I got up and yelled a big old yes.
Oh, you were alone.
I was completely alone. Just
wonderful.
Like the proctor. Yeah. So that worked out pretty well. So very exciting stuff, though.
That's unusual. Very because, unusual. Like you said, Prometric centers, it's usually a beehive with people coming and going and leaving. And
yeah, it really was unusual, actually. Yeah.
Extremely. Yeah. So a very important note here at this time for everybody, make sure that you do receive the printed exam score report. Only for one reason. I have heard or learned of a student in the PMP exam whose exam score got lost. For some reason, the Prometric Center was moving that week, and for some reason, that particular student's they didn't remember that the person was there. There was no record of them ever taking the exam. The score wasn't anywhere, but he had a printed score report saying, I was there, I passed, I'm a PMP, give me my certificate.
Exactly. Very good advice.
Right. I mean, again, it's very unlikely that this will happen to anybody, but if it does happen, you want to make sure that you get that printed report. Also, you said, expect the worst in terms of security.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. You should also expect the worst of things that can happen during the exam. For example, one of the students that I had, she told me that her computer crashed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she then decided, okay, they restarted it for me, I can continue, and then she failed the exam. Did she fail the exam because she didn't know it? Did she fail the exam because the whole experience of computer crashing and so got her flustered and she was out of sorts? My recommendation is, if the computer crashes, tell them, nope, I'm stopping. I want to come back. This is completely, shaken me up. Give me another day.
Absolutely. Great advice.
Then you can come back.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I assume you haven't actually received your certificate yet, right? Because it's only been a week.
Right. It normally takes about 6 to 8 weeks to receive the actual certificate from PMI.
Well, but you can still call yourself PMI-ACP because the moment that you see congratulations on the screen, you're allowed to put it behind your name.
Yes.
Lovely.
You are correct, sir.
Now that you have the PMI-ACP, now that you have taught your first live, in-person, in-classroom PMI-ACP course, what's next in your career?
Well, actually, that was my biggest thing because I'm a PMP exam prep instructor. And obviously, PMI is the center of my career development and my career path right now. So what I'm looking at doing is continuing that. To book courses as a PMI-ACP instructor, and also continuing with my PMP exam instruction as far as an instructor. In addition to that, over the last 9 or 10 months, I've also been an agile coach for some Southern California organizations. So I'd like to do that also. For me, it's really all about taking all the knowledge that I've gained and passing it on to other people so they can use that knowledge to make their lives more efficient and improve their own career advancement. So that's kind of what my plan is moving forward.
Are you planning to add any more acronyms behind your name? So are you planning any more certifications?
Well, I've gotten 4 certifications in the last 16 months, Cornelius, so I'm going to take a little time off. But having said that, I am still interested in maybe one day possibly pursuing the PMI RMP, the Risk Management Professional, because I think risk, it's my favorite area of instruction as far as being an instructor. And also, even on agile projects, in addition to traditional waterfall projects, risk management is still underutilized. And I think it's important to get the message out and the proper ways and principles and practices and tools to use risk management to its ultimate goal of reducing that risk on any type of project.
Lovely. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners on their PMI-ACP exam preparation?
Basically 2 things. One has to do with the PMI-ACP preparation. Whatever your plan is, stick with it. And again, sit for those exam simulations, the full 120, as many as you can, and stay with that routine so that you have it ingrained in your brain when you sit down for the actual exam itself. Can't stress that enough. In terms of continuing certification requirements, one thing I did want to let people know is that you concentrate on the 30 PDUs for your PMI-ACP first. So I'm making the assumption that some or most of our listeners are already PMPs or will be PMPs in addition to being PMI-ACPs at one point. So what this refers to is you need 30 PDUs every 3 years to continue your certification as a PMI-ACP. I suggest you do those first because of the fact not only do those 30 PDUs count toward your PMI-ACP, they also count toward your PMP continuing certification. Am I making sense?
You are making absolute sense.
Okay.
So the idea is this: we need 60 PDUs as PMPs,
Right.
and we need 30 PDUs as PMI ACP certified individual.
Yes.
PDUs, the 30 PDUs, they have to be based on agile training, on agile best practices.
Right.
Okay? But these 30 PDUs that come from agile also qualify for PMP. So once you're done with your 30 PDUs, your 30 agile PDUs,
Right.
you're already halfway there with your PMP PDUs.
Exactly.
I think I need a graphical overview.
Yes, I think we do. We need an image for that.
All right, Kevin, once again, congratulations on passing your PMI ACP exam, and thank you very much for being here on the program and letting us know what it's like.
Thank you, Cornelius. It's always a pleasure.
And that was part 2 of our discussion with Kevin Riley on becoming PMI ACP certified. That's it for today. Thank you again for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. If you are a project manager and you want to become either PMP or PMI ACP certified, then the easiest way to do so is with one of our sister podcasts, either the PM Prepcast or the Agile Prepcast, and study for the exam by watching the in-depth exam prep videos from pm-prepcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. It is always easier to talk about change than to make it happen. Until next time.